Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Polish transport companies are continuing their protests on the Polish-Ukrainian border against unfair competition from Ukraine. The Polish Ministry of Infrastructure wants to ban Ukrainian companies from cabotage transport within the European Union and to introduce licences for these services. The Minister of Agriculture, Alvin Gayadhur, also announced more intensive inspections by the Road Transport Inspectorate. Minister of Infrastructure Alvin Gayadhur appeared in Parliament to give details of over 15,000 inspections carried out by the Road Transport Inspectorate. That's about 60% of all foreign vehicles from outside the European Union. Among other things, the compliance of the transport documentation with the actual load of the vehicle was checked. Gayadhur drew attention to the negative impact of the abolition of road permits on the functioning of EU transport companies. Since the 1st of July 2022, Ukrainian drivers have not required permits to enter the European Union, which has led to them taking over the market previously served by Polish businesses. In addition, the electronic queue system for crossing the border introduced by Ukraine discriminates against EU carriers, including Polish carriers, who must stay on the territory of Ukraine for up to 2 weeks while waiting to cross the border. This reduces the competitiveness of EU hauliers and directly affects the functioning of the Polish road transport sector. The protesting hauliers are demanding the exclusion of carriers returning from Ukraine from the electronic queue system and the restoration of the road permit system for international road transport. Poland is demanding that the European Union establish a committee to examine the effects of lifting transport restrictions for Ukrainian companies. The Sejm voted against the government's bill on freezing energy prices, but did adopt the new coalition's draft, which was sent to the committee for further work. Last night, amendments to the bill of the Civic Platform and Poland 2050 MPs were submitted, aimed at supporting consumers of electricity, gas and heating. The amendment removes from the bill controversial provisions regarding wind turbines. The amendments to the bill on freezing energy prices next year are 69 pages long. The authors of the draft, the parties of the new parliamentary majority, Civic Platform and Poland 2050, deleted all references to the location of wind farms, the expropriation of land and the age of wind turbines used to repower wind farms in existing locations. The new parliamentary majority still wants to liberalise the rules for the construction and operation of onshore wind farms, but will include this in a separate bill. Law and Justice politicians ask why the new law on freezing energy prices should apply only until the 30th of June 2024. That is, until the end of the local government and European Parliament elections. Law and Justice politicians suggest that after this date, the new parliamentary majority wishes to increase electricity prices. The entire report of the Commission on Russian influence in Poland has been published in the latest issue of the weekly Gazeta Polska. Remember that only last week the Sejm voted to dismiss all members of the committee, but before the vote a report was published in which it was recommended not to entrust public positions related to security to Donald Tusk, Tomasz Siemionek, Bogdan Klich, among others. Paweł Błok has more on the story. The report of the Commission investigating Russian influence was published today in Gazeta Polska Weekly. The document clearly shows that during the times of the PO-PSL government, a policy of openness towards Russia was pursued. The Military Counterintelligence Service, the SKW, which is an institution whose basic task is to protect the Polish armed forces against threats from foreign special services, has been influenced by the Russian Federation. Between April 2010 and December 2011, the SKW-FSB cooperation was carried out without the formal consent of the Prime Minister and without the knowledge of the Minister of National Defence, documents confirm. The 2013 agreement was harmful to the interests of the Republic of Poland, also in terms of being in conflict with the Republic of Poland's obligations towards NATO. In 2011, Donald Tusk agreed to cooperation between the Polish SKW and the Russian FSB. The Polish side agreed to inform Russia about the activities of third countries, including members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Consequently, Donald Tusk's government agreed to spy on NATO.
Sam proces procedowania.
The very act of establishing this procedure related to cooperation with the Russians violated legal norms, but the 2013 agreement also put Polish counterintelligence officers in a difficult position. There was criticism of the report in the media. It was said to include the names of Russian agents who were not Russian agents. Former chairman of the Commission, Sławomir Cęckiewicz, commented on the allegations. After all, it is the old SKW audit study from 2016, which is an annex to report, and not the Commission report itself, in which it was verified and corrected. Tomasz Siemionek, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Defence in Donald Tusk's cabinet, was also asked about cooperation between the SKW and the FSB. the politician has nothing to reproach himself with.
Takie założenie,
The assumption that we should only contact democratic countries is absurd. We talked in the same way with the countries of Central Asia bordering Afghanistan, and these countries are not known for respecting human rights. As I have always said, in the interests of Poland, we can talk even to the devil. One of the manifestations of the rapprochement between Polish counterintelligence and Russian security services was a meeting in Kadyń, during which Polish generals drank alcohol with Russians and gave them officers' sabres. The experiences of exorcists show that cooperation with the devil can lead to possession. Our services and their chiefs have been possessed by Russia, and now they pretend not to see it. Last week, the Sejm dismissed the committee members and therefore stopped the investigation of Russian influence in Poland. Experts indicate that this was one of the first decisions of the new parliamentary majority. For them, this is a very important priority. They treated it as a very urgent matter, which indicates that someone is very keen not to describe or investigate Russian influence in Poland. The Commission recommended that Donald Tusk, Jacek Cichocki, Bogdan Klich, Tomasz Siemionek and Bartłomiej Sienkiewicz should not be entrusted with public positions responsible for state security. The committee's recommendation applies to MPs who will decide who will head the future government. Everything indicates that, contrary to the committee's recommendation, it will be Donald Tusk. Teenagers' mathematics and reading skills are in an unprecedented decline across dozens of countries, and COVID school closures are only partly to be blamed, the OECD said on Tuesday in its latest survey of global learning standards. Nearly 700,000 youths took the 2-hour test last year in the OECD's 38 mostly developed country members and 44 non-members for the latest study, closely watched by policymakers as the largest international comparison of educational performance.
Overall, the 2022 assessment saw an unprecedented drop in performance across the OECD. Compared to 2018, mean performance fell by 10 score points in reading and by almost 15 score points in maths, which is equivalent to half a year's worth of learning progress in reading and 3/4 of a year's worth in mathematics.
Compared to when the tests were last conducted in 2018, reading performance fell by 10 points on average in OECD countries and by 15 points in mathematics, a loss equivalent to 3/4 of a year's worth of learning. While more than half of the 81 countries surveyed saw declines, Germany, Iceland, the Netherlands, Norway and Poland saw particularly sharp drops in mathematics scores, the OECD said.
This 2022 assessment, which focuses on mathematics, saw a sharp decline in maths performance 3 times greater than any previous consecutive change. The downturn on maths results in 2022 was particularly significant in countries like Germany, Iceland, Norway and Poland, which all saw a drop of 25 score points or more in maths. Yet the decline in performance in all 3 fields measured can only partially be attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic.
On average, across the OECD, 1 out of 4 15-year-olds tested as a low performer in maths, reading and science, which means they could not use basic algorithms or interpret simple texts, the study found. Poorer results tended to be associated with higher rates of mobile phone use for leisure and where schools reported teacher shortages.
The pandemic certainly played some role. We see clearly that countries like Brazil that closed schools for longer had in generally a disadvantage in terms of learning outcomes. But we've seen other trends. You could see, digital distractions, and that is true also for students in Brazil. There's a high share of young people basically feeling anxious, distracted by their digital devices in classrooms. I think that's a factor. The decline in parental support. Now, we have seen how important parents are, at home and also in engaging with school, and that has dropped. All of those things could have played a role in the decline.
The OECD said the decline was not inevitable, pointing to Singapore, where students scored the highest in maths, reading and science, with results that suggested they were on average 3 to 5 years ahead of their OECD peers. After Singapore, Macau, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan and South Korea also outperformed in maths and science, where Estonia and Canada also scored well. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.